Yuki was an overpowered idiot who, after getting isekai'd for the second time, gets reincarnated and decides to live a low-key life. Unfortunately, this doesn't work as the new world he finds himself is at war. Before all of this, Yuki sits all alone in his classroom staring outside the class. At that moment, his childhood friend, Yui, goes to ask him what he is staring at. Yuki, who is uninterested, tells her he knows she would spark a rumor if she continues to interact with him in the class. Hearing this, Yui tells him she does not care as she touches his hair, and tells him that he looks gloomy with the way one of his eyes is covered due to his overgrown hair. She offers to help him cut his hair as usual, but Yuki sighs, realizing that he would not be able to get rid of her easily. Yui also adds that she believes that Yuki would always be the person she had known right from their childhood. Then Yuki tells her that he would allow her to help him to cut his hair, and she promises to make him look cool. Yuki looks outside through the window and begins to wonder how the other world is doing, and just in time, a sudden thunder strikes, and all of the students become scared. Yuki begins to wonder what is happening. Then the students suddenly sees a huge pattern on the floor in the classroom, and this pattern begins to shine a huge ray of light as it spreads across the classroom.
Holy Jesus! What is that?
But Yuki smiles and questions himself as he believes she had seen something like that happen before. All the students in the classroom realizes that they are in a huge field, and they all begins to question why and how they got to the place, but Yuki looks around, and he tells himself that he knew it. Then Yuki becomes scared, and as she is about to ask Yuki why he is smiling, the students suddenly hear some loud noises. The students becomes more shocked when they see some huge monsters in armors coming towards them, but some of the students think it is a movie shoot as they could not believe their eyes. Yuki recognizes the monsters as he says it out loud, that the monsters are using some sort of magical powers. Then the other students begins to run, and when Yuki notices that Yuki is not running and a monster is heading towards him, she immediately runs to meet him and hugs him so as to protect him from getting hit. Yuki, who is getting entertained, begins to smile, and when the monster tries to hit him and Yui, he uses the tip of his finger to push the monster away with a great impact. Yui becomes surprised, but Yuki tells her that they have to leave the scene, but while running towards where the other students are, Yui calls out to Yuki, and she tells him to look at what is happening in the front. When Yuki checks, the students suddenly sees a huge army coming towards them to defeat the monsters, but while watching, Yuki wonders why the war had not ended, but he suddenly sees that the monsters are controlled by a magical power sealed with a curse. A lady who is among the army calls out to Yui, and she explains that the battlefield is dangerous for them, so they would have to leave for the city. The lady adds that the royal knights would look after them, but another member of the royal knights comes to meet the lady and he tells her that they have to fight the monsters. Yuki smiles and he immediately tells Yui that they have to run away from the field. The students get to the palace, and while they are being addressed by the king, they all realize that the name of the kingdom is Destinia. The king thanks them as foreign heroes for coming in their time of emergency, as the kingdom is invaded by demons. Then he adds that the war had happened 5 years before, but they were rescued by some foreign hero. The students become surprised as they hear the king referring to them as heroes. Then the princess of Destiania addresses them as she pleads with them not to be confused. She adds that a hero had helped them to stop the war 5 years back, but the war had begun again, and the kingdom would not see their arrival as a coincidence. She asks them if they would be willing to help, and the students begins to think about the other options they have, but when they all see that they do not have any other choice than to go away from the castle and be killed by the demons. Soon, the students agree one after the other, and the princess tells them to retire to the rooms prepared for them for the meantime before they all begin their training. The students murmur and leave as they all have questions regarding all that had happened, but Yui sees Yuki, and when he sees that she is scared, he assures her that he would make sure he protects her from whatever danger close to her. The following day, the students are trained in some combat sessions and how to wield swords by practicing with a wooden sword. The top knights of the royal army trains them in magic as well, but when the students think they are unable to use magic, Yui suddenly does a fire magic, and she becomes very excited but unknown to her. Yuki has been watching her from a distance as he did not join the other students to train intentionally. He becomes proud of Yui as he tells himself excitedly that Yuki has some potential, but when Yuki leaves, he suddenly sees a lady who is among the knights of the royal army. He recognizes her and calls her name, Elka, but she immediately corrects him that they are going to war, and it would be unprofessional if he calls her like that as she is a senior knight. Yuki becomes rude, and he tells her that he does not have to add any form of respect to her name, as she did not add it while introducing herself. Then Elka gets pissed, but she keeps her cool as she tells Yuki that his calm composure in an alien environment is highly commendable. But she also adds that his proud nature reminds her of a hero that was in their kingdom 5 years back, as the hero also possesses such arrogance which causes him to be blind to the way the ladies around him feels towards him. Elka pleads with Yuki to go and train or she would force him, and he immediately replies that it would be fun for him if she uses force. Elka and Yuki faces each other, and the both of them takes a battle stance, and when Elka attacks Yuki, he immediately hits her with a rather unusual force, and when she falls down, she becomes shocked and she tells Yuki that she recognizes that rush of energy as the one of the hero that was in their kingdom few years back. Yuki asks her if she has remembered him, and she immediately bows down as she calls him by his original name, Setsu. She pleads with Setsu, and she poses as a stool for him to sit on as he is her great master.
We don't do that.
The head of the royal army named Glean comes, and when he sees Elka and Setsu in such a manner, he becomes confused, and Elka immediately explains to him that Setsu, their master, is back in another body. Glean and Elka decide to go and tell their third friend Thea, but before they are able to break the news to Thea greets Setsu, and she tells him that she already knew he was back because of the energy of his magical power. After exchanging pleasantries, Setsu announces to the three that he is back home, but he immediately remembers what had happened before he left mysteriously, which could have put the kingdom in danger. The knights ask Setsu how he ended up in their world again, and he replies that he is not sure, as he only remembers that he got blasted by a sort of magical force while fighting with Toma, who started the war in the first place. He also adds that he got reborn into his original world while keeping his memories and skills. Then he asks them what happened to Toma, as he thinks Toma is behind the war between Destinia and the demons. Suddenly the king calls for Glean, and when he gets to the castle, the king announces that Destinia wants to declare a full war on the demons, but Glean tries to stall the attack by telling the king that they would have to wait for their messenger, who had gone to deliver a message to the demon tribe, to arrive before making any decision. Yuki, on the other hand, continues to practice her magical skills very well, and when Yuki goes to meet her, he commends her for working hard, but when she asks him if all they are practicing for is to hurt someone, he is unable to give her a good answer, but she tells him that she would work hard so that she would always be by his side and protect him. Setsu goes to meet his team, and he announces to them that he wants to go and stop the war like he did before, but when his team decides that they want to follow him, he tells them that he has to go alone. He explains to them, and finally they agree, but he tells them that they all need to get his sword, named Kuromaru, and after going to the castle's storage room to get the weapon. Setsu bids his friends goodbye, but Yui suddenly calls out to him as she had been running from the castle. Then she begins to ask him where he is going to with tears in her eyes. Setsu reveals that he was the hero that was summoned to Destinia 5 years back, and he also tells her that he is the only one that can stop the war. Then Yugi pleads with him that she wants to follow him, but he explains to her that he has to go on the journey by himself. Yui agrees, and she hugs Setsu as she tells him that he is a kind person, but before he leaves, Yui tells Setsu to close his eyes, and when he does, she uses her wind and fire magic to cut his hair for him, which makes his second eye visible. Setsu bids them goodbye, and Yui decides that she would work very hard, so that she would have improved greatly before Setsu comes back. A young girl travels in a carriage, and while traveling down a dark and lonely forest, she recounts how her grandfather had protected a particular item, which is a brooch that was given to him to repair as the greatest goldsmith in town. But she also remembers that her grandfather had taught her that money is enough to solve any problem. The horse of the carriage suddenly stops, and she becomes scared as she tries to make the horse move. But before she is able to do anything, she suddenly sees a huge monster in front of her, and the monster immediately attacks the carriage. She falls down, and when she sees that the brooch she is meant to deliver is on the floor, she immediately picks it up and keeps it in her backpack. She becomes relieved, and she admits that her grandfather would haunt her if she ever misplaced the brooch. Suddenly, she sees the monster in front of her again, and she begins to shiver because the monster smells like death itself. She pleads with the monster not to eat her as she begins to explain 50 reasons why the monster should not devour her. For her final trick, she decides to try to bribe the monster with money.
Shut up, bitch!
But the monster keeps growling at her until she hears a loud bang, and she immediately falls down, waiting for her death to come. She hears a loud bang, and when she looks up, she sees a young man, Setsu, who helps her to kill the monster. She immediately asks Setsu if he wants her money, but she also informs him that she does not have any money on her until she delivers her goods. Setsu tells her that he was just passing and he is not interested in her money. Then the girl tells Setsu that her grandfather had always told her that there is no free service, but Setsu thinks her grandfather is a jerk for teaching her that way. Setsu advises the girl on traveling alone, as her money would not be effective if she dies, but she looks at him and remembers that he looks like one man who had gotten it good from her grandfather. She also asks Setsu if he would be her guard, and after thinking about it, Setsu agrees, but he tells the girl that he does not have to be paid as he is heading towards her destination as well. He also adds that they would go their separate ways in the next town, and she agrees to this condition. The two board the horse, and on the way, the girl, whose name is Ruri, becomes sad because of her other goods which was left behind, and Setsu tells her that he only agreed to be her guard and not her porter. Then he notices that she holds a special package, and when he asks if that is the package she wants to deliver, she tells him that she would not show him the content of the package. After a few days of traveling, they get to the port town, and while walking, Ruri asks Setsu if he has been to the town before, and he replies that he had been in the town before the trade went up. Soon, Ruri tells Setsu that she would board a ship that would take her to the demonic continent in order to deliver her package, but as she asks from one captain to another, they all tell her that they would not be able to take her to the demonic continent because of the war. Ruri becomes disappointed, but she decides that she will keep on trying, but Setsu watches from afar, and when he decides to go and talk to her, he notices that some guards are trying to bully her. The guards stop Ruri, and when they ask her if she is a merchant, she replies to them, but they decide to check her special package, but when she refuses, they threaten to arrest her. Setsu walks up to the guards, and he accuses them of trying to inspect Ruri's goods. Then the guards insult Setsu as a mere adventurer, but Setsu dares them to draw their swords as he is Ruri's guard. The soldiers try to draw their swords, but when they see that most of the villagers are already watching, they decide to leave the two alone after threatening to deal with them later. Setsu begins to wonder how Elkut and Glean are able to put up with rogues like the soldiers, but Ruri suddenly jumps on him, and he thanks him for protecting her. Later that night, Ruri buys food, and while eating, Setsu asks her how she is going to deliver her package. Then she explains to him that she would try to see if she can get a ship, but if she is not able to get one, she has decided to buy one and sail across to the demonic continent. Setsu explains to Ruri how impossible her plan is, but when he realizes that she is sad, he informs her that he is also going to the demonic continent, and he would help her. Then she asks him how much money would be needed to execute his plan, but he only tells her that they would only have to get an inn to spend the night at. Ruri agrees, but she asks Setsu for a favor, and when he asks what it is, she pleads with him that they should split the cost of the inn.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
At the inn, Setsu takes his bath, and when he tells Ruri to use the bath, she asks him if he can help her to look after her special package, but before she uses the bath, she decides to show Setsu the package, and when she opens it, the package contains a brooch, which makes Setsu surprised as he thinks he has seen the brooch before. She explains further that the brooch was the last job her grandfather took before he got sick and died, and she also adds that her grandfather had trusted her to deliver the package, but she is showing him because she trusts him more. Ruri leaves to go to the bath, but she tells Setsu not to steal her money while she is gone, and when she leaves the room, she becomes excited as she is able to finally trust someone. Meanwhile, Setsu touches the brooch, and it emits a magical smoke, and he immediately tells himself that he knew that was the same brooch he has casted a magic spell on. Later that night, Ruri and Setsu sleep peacefully. Then Setsu hears a loud bang, and he immediately knows that it is the soldiers from the afternoon, and he wakes up, takes his sword, and prepares to fight them. The soldiers ask the innkeeper for Setsu's rooms. When they are told, they barge into the room, and Ruri suddenly wakes up as she begins to tremble for fear. And Setsu immediately tells her that they would have to leave for the demonic continent earlier than they had planned. Setsu carries Ruri, and he jumps off through the window, and the soldiers begins to run after them, but Setsu continues to run with Ruri in his arms, and when they get to a closed area, he puts Ruri, who had been crying all along. Then they both run until they get to a dead end. The soldiers laugh at the two for not being able to escape, but Setsu provokes the soldiers more, and when Ruri pleads with him not to provoke the soldiers, he suddenly carries her up again and tells her that they have to leave. Setsu jumps, and when the soldiers think Setsu and Ruri are going to die, Setsu and Ruri land on a water dragon called Levia. Then he begs Levia to take them to the demon continent, as he would explain later. The soldiers watch in awe, and they all decide not to report anything as they would sound dumb. On getting to their destination, Livia battles a huge squid and Setsu begins to watch the show and he cheers on, but Livia yells at him to help her instead of spectating. Livia defeats the squid and changes into her human body, then Setsu introduces her to Ruri as the god of the ocean and his good friend. Ruri becomes thrilled as she is able to meet the legendary Livia, but Livia exchanged pleasantries with Ruri. But after that, she yells at Setsu for not helping her to fight the squid. Setsu tells her that he was being entertained as it has been a long time since he witnessed such, but Livia recounts that he had abandoned her for 5 years only for him to come back and use her as a means of transportation. Ruri interrupts their banters, and she asks them what they are going to do with the huge squid as they are not supposed to leave it there, but Livia tells her that Setsu would take care of it. Later, Setsu uses some parts of the squid to make his infamous squid rings, and when Ruri tries it, she becomes surprised as they taste good. Livia explains the routes to the Demon Lord's castle, and when Ruri hears, she becomes aware of where she is supposed to take her package to. Setsu also tells Ruri that he has some business with the recipient of the package, then Livia notices that Ruri is not aware of who the Demon Lord is. Livia immediately explains to Ruri that her package is supposed to be delivered to Evilbarrow, which is where the Demon Lord's castle is, and the Demon Lord, who is the owner of the brooch, is named Disaster. Livia adds that they would have to go on foot as she had done her part in transporting them, and she begins to go, but Setsu asks her if she is going to follow him to see Disaster, and she immediately yells at him that she kept her promise to maintain peace on the seas only for him to come back after 5 years and talk to her anyhow. As Setsu tries to explain that a lot had happened since he left, some little demo children go to meet Setsu, and they ask him why he is quarreling with his lover, as he is supposed to apologize for whatever he had done. In order to send the kids away, Setsu dips some squid rings in their mouth, and he sends them away, but after tasting the squid rings, the children become excited and begin to leap for joy as they beg Setsu to help them make more for their parents. Livia cheers for the children, and she tells Setsu that they should take the remaining squid to the village nearby in order to share it for them, as they cannot finish it alone. Setsu carries the huge squid and takes it into the village, while the children sing and cheer behind him. However, the village heads all sit, and they begin to lament about how the huge squid would not let them fish, and because of the war, the merchants have stopped moving their goods to the demonic continent. They begin to think about what they can do to defeat the squid, but Setsu interrupts them and asks if he can place his squid in the village to cook, but the elders all become shocked as they all wonder how the squid came into the village as food for them. Later that night, the villagers marry as they are all excited to have food, and their major challenge has been conquered. The villagers place Livia on a high podium, and they thank her for saving them, while Setsu and Ruri play the role of the cook and attendant in serving the villagers, who watch in awe as Setsu uses his skills to slice the huge squid. By the outskirts of the town, the Demon Lord's personal guard, Vlad, looks at the town and thinks the town is being attacked by humans. Then he rushes to the village to save them from any possible danger. Meanwhile, Ruri calls Livia for a chat after the whining and dining in the village, and when she asks Livia how she met Setsu, Livia tells Ruri that she had fought with Setsu, who tried to go across her ocean without permission. Then she adds that Setsu defeated her, and they became friends, but she lies about the fact that she had gone on a rampage due to the war, and Setsu silenced her with just one punch. Ruri becomes fascinated, but Livia asks her if she did not know that Setsu was the famous hero in Destinia. Ruri becomes shocked as she is not aware that Setsu is the same hero she had heard about, but she begins to yell as she had told the almighty hero to be her guard, but Livia laughs at her and tells her that Setsu would not talk about himself unless he was prompted to do so. Livia shows how angry she is towards Setsu again, but she suddenly looks at him, and she tells Ruri that she was waiting for him to return. Then Vlad suddenly yells as he runs into the town to supposedly save them. The villagers look at Vlad, and they wonder what is going on in his head, but later they invite him to join them and have Setsu's squid rings, and a few hours later, Setsu is able to prepare and give the squid rings to the villagers. Later, Vlad apologizes to Livia for barging into the town, but he tells her that he is surprised to see her in the town in her human form. Setsu also joins them, and Vlad immediately recognizes Setsu as the missing hero. Then he pleads with Livia and Setsu to save the Demon Lord. Vlad begins to explain that the Demon Lord is being asked to marry a human called Terran Sneeder, and the human has brought a cursed necklace for enslavement instead of a ring, and the curse is so powerful that the demon lord is unable to resist it. Vlad explains further that the humans had attacked the demon continent by using some soldiers with huge armors who left the flag of Destinia behind, and when the demon lord sent an emissary to Destinia, the emissary was yet to come back. Setsu becomes surprised on hearing this, and Livia asks Vlad if Terran is saying he can end the war, but Ruri explains that Terran is a huge merchant who has a trading company which possesses a large number of the ships at sea moving from continent to continent. Setsu becomes very angry as Dizastal is willing to become a slave in order to stop the war, but when he tries to take out his anger on Vlad by yelling at him, Livia reminds Setsu that Dizastal is willing to become a slave because she had promised him that she would maintain the peace he had restored in the world. Livia suddenly begins to think out loud as she blames Dizastal for keeping a promise she had made to a man who suddenly disappeared without any prior knowledge. Then she adds that it is the main reason they would have to go and save her. Livia and Setsu begins to run to the demon lord's castle, and while running, Setsu reminds Livia that they are using the same route as the one they used when they wanted to launch a surprise attack on the castle during the war 5 years back, but Livia replies him that it is definitely on if their core memories. Some monsters try to attack them on the way, and they both recount how Vlad has told them that they do not have much time before the wedding occurs, and that Terran is surrounded by some skilled guards. Livia takes care of the monsters by using her magical powers to defeat them, while they continue to run towards the castle. Livia asks Setsu what his plan is, and he tells her that he is planning to stop the wedding and kill Terran, but when she asks how he is going to stop the war without Terran, he replies that he is suspecting that Terran is actually behind the war. He explains that in Destinia they had said the demons attacked first, while in Ivelbaro they said the humans attacked first, and when he saw the huge armored monsters, he noticed that they were controlled by a curse, which means someone is behind the war, and he believes that Terran knows something about it.
Oh my.
Livia recounts how being with Setsu unlocked her excitement to go on more adventures with him, and she also gets determined not to let Dizastal get all of the attention from Setsu. But she commends Setsu's squid rings openly, and he replies her that he would continue to make more for her. The demon lord Dizastal begins to recount how she has lived a long life enough for her to always guide her people against any form of war. She also recounts when she met Setsu, who had told her that he can help her stop the war, and after she agreed, he gave her a token of reconciliation, which is the brooch. She became devastated when she hears the news of the missing hero, but she decides that she will keep her promise of peace to Setsu. While walking with Vlad in the market, she realizes that the brooch Setsu had given her is broken, and Vlad immediately tells her that he would take it to a famous jeweler in Destinia. Then she thanks him for troubling him with her personal errand. When a guard had told Dizastal about how the Dystianian army had attacked them, Dizastal tells her warriors to prepare, but she tells Vlad that something is suspicious about the attack. Then she sends 2 of her warriors to go to Destinia to find out what had happened, because they had only signed the peace charter 5 years back. After days of honor hearing anything from Destinia, Dizastal begins to doubt if she can keep her promise to Setsu, because her soldiers have decided to fight to her some time in order to restore the peace in the kingdom. Vlad suddenly comes in with the news that a man named Terran Sneeder wants to speak with her. Terran proposes that he wants to help Dizastal stop the war, and in return he would have to marry her. It explains that he would use his influence as the most sought-out traitor to help stop the war with Destinia, and his only price would be to have Dizastal as his wife. He proceeds to present a cursed necklace of enslavement as the necklace in which they would make their vows. Dizastal begins to think about Terran's offer, and the soldiers begin to tell her not to accept Terran's offer. Dizastal tells Terran that she would think about his offer, but when he leaves, she begins to think of what to do, and when Vlad goes to meet her, he tries to tell her not to think of Terran's offer as an option, as the soldiers are willing to fight till their last breath for her, but she dismissed Vlad, as she tells him that she would make sure she makes the right decision for her people. Unknown to them, Terran discusses with a strange man in his carriage, and he tells the man that the demon lord was easier to convince than he expected. He also asks the man if they should withdraw their huge magic soldiers, but the man tells him not to worry, as it is the wish of his master not to pull back the magic soldiers. Back to the present day, the whole demonic continent all sit as they wait to witness the joining of Terrence and the demon lord, but while the demons all sit unhappy, Terran becomes excited as he also has some weird-looking men in coats who are there to protect him. The bride enters and she begins to feel sad, but she repeats it in her mind that she is doing all of that because of the promise she made to Setsu. Turin says his vows and he brings out the cursed necklace, but as he is about to put it in Disastal's neck, Disastal suddenly wishes to see Setsu for the last time, but at that same moment, Setsu suddenly breaks into the cathedral, thereby interrupting the joining. As Disastal sees Setsu, she immediately recognizes him as he tells her that she is planning to do something stupid, just because she had made a promise to him. Turin becomes scared, and he immediately tells his guards to protect him. Then the guards tries to attack Setsu, but Livia suddenly uses her magical powers to take them out. Turin runs away crying, but the head guard who Turin spoke to in his carriage suddenly begins to use shadow magic to attack Livia. As he is about to hurt Livia, Setsu suddenly steps in, and he begins to hit him as he asks him if he is ready to pay for making Disastal cry. The strange man tells Setsu that he would have a juicy report for his master, and when the man sees that he is unable to defeat Setsu, he disappears after telling Setsu that he would definitely inform his master of his arrival. Disastal goes to hug Setsu, and she tells him how much she misses him, but Livia tells them to look at the defeated soldiers, and when they check, the soldiers suddenly vanished, and Disastal tells them that the soldiers are made from a magic curse. Setsu looks at the cursed necklace as well, and he tells Disastal that he knows that Toma is behind it due to the kind of curses used. Then, Disastal offers to help Setsu, but he tells her that he is going to visit Regulus, the king of the beastmen, as she would have to take care of things in Evilbaro, because of the promise they have to keep. Livia suddenly asks if they are already leaving, as she adds that she hopes she is not the one that would ferry them again.
I don't like where this is going.
Ruri runs in with Vlad, and she calls out to Setsu, and she hands him the special package so that he would be the one to give Disastal. Setsu collects the package and he presents it to Disastal for the second time, and this makes her very emotional as she tells herself that Setsu has shown her what it means to live for the second time. However, Yula recounts how she met Setsu when they were little because they were living close to each other. She recounts how she thought he was a scary boy, but when they grew up together, she was able to realize how good and kind he is, as he would help her with her schoolwork and was okay with her over the years. She remembers a day when she was scared to take the entrance examination of a higher school, all because she wanted to be in the same school with Setsu. After taking the examination and she fails woefully, Setsu saves her from some students who try to disturb her on her way home, and when he asks her what she is meant to do, she is unable to reply to him as she begins to cry. Setsu decides to help her as he tells her that he would help her to study. Then Yui becomes excited as she immediately makes up her mind that she wants to be with Setsu, whom she is in love with. In the present day, the heroes continue their training with Elka, and Yui has improved a lot, but after training, she runs after Elka and Glean to ask how they became Setsu's companions. Elka explains to her that they all desire to fight alongside Setsu, but she adds that she personally wishes to be with Setsu, but she is not sure if he looks at her the same way. Yui also reveals her intention to be with Setsu, and she wishes to train more so as to be able to protect him. She pleads with Elka to give her a form of special training, and later that evening, Elka shows Yui the peaceful world Setsu had created for them, but after listening to all of the things Setsu had done, Yui informs Elka that she is determined to do whatever it takes to be strong, and Elka decides to train her. The two engage in a duel, and at the end, Elka commends Yui for getting stronger, but she tells her that she is only lacking one thing. Elka takes Yui to an underground training ground meant for advanced heroes, but she tells Yui that she is going to know if she is truly ready. A water monster comes out of the pond, and Elka gives Yui instructions on how she would defeat the monster, but in the end, Elka tells Yui that she lacks the determination to defeat her enemies. Yui begins to explain that she cannot hurt anyone, but Elka becomes harsh and tells her that it is the only thing she needs, because if she does not hurt her enemies, they would hurt her loved ones. Elka kills the monster, and she leaves. Then Yui, who begins to cry knowing she is not capable. Later that night, Thea goes to heal Yui's wounds, and she explains to Yui that Elka is not being harsh, but after a heart-to-heart discussion with Thea, Yui feels relived a little bit, and when Thea finishes with Yui, she meets Elka on her way out, and she also talks to Elka to take it easy on Yui. Yui also goes to meet Glean, and when she asks him how he deals with killing his enemies on the battlefield, and when he explains, she tells him that she has decided on what to do. The following day, Elka apologizes for being harsh on Yui, while the both of them go back to the underground training spot. The monster comes out again, and when Yui defeats it, Elka becomes proud of her and tells her that she found her determination to kill, but Yui explains that she did not kill the monster, as she is determined to only weaken her enemies and not kill them.
Stop the cap!
She explains further that she would work hard so that she would not lose to any of her enemies as well, and because of this reply, Elka becomes more fulfilled that he has successfully trained Yui. Glean announces to the heroes that he would be going to Ivalbero, and while he is gone, they should all prepare as they would be going to war soon. On their way to the Beastman village, Setsu asks Livia what she is stuffing her face with food, and she replies that it is supposed to be a form of reward for her. Setsu also asks if Livia can do the transfer magic, and she replied to him that she is only the god of the seas and that kind of magic would require years of practice. Suddenly, the carriage stops and two passengers enter, and when the passenger sees Setsu, Setsu also recognizes the girl as Crybaby Alizi, as he calls her. Alizi becomes so excited to see her master, and she immediately begins to cry as she tells him that she is no more a crybaby. Setsu proceeds to introduce Alizi to Livia, and when Setsu explains how they had traveled together the last time he was summoned, Alizi also adds that she is his brightest student as he had taught her a lot of combat skills and all. The little girl beside Alizi talks, and when Livia asks who she is, Alizi introduces the little girl as her sister, Amel. Setsu asks if she had a sister all along, and Alizi tells them that a lot of things had happened, and that is why she is living together with Amel. Alizi asks Setsu where he had been for 5 years, and after explaining to her, she immediately understands him. Then he asks her to follow them to the Beastman continent, but she refuses politely as she tells them that she also has a serious issue she needs to attend to, and Amel immediately apologizes as she reveals that the issues Alizi is having is because of her. Alizi begins to explain that she had continued to take a job to defeat monsters, but she got a job to defeat a dragon in a village, and when she got there she was given a house where Amel stayed all by herself. She adds that Amel had told her that her brother suddenly got missing after the dragon came to destroy the village, but she hears of Amel's story and decides to be her elder sister for the time they spent together. Setsu asks if the dragon had killed Amel's brother, but Alizi tells him that it is not the case as there is no trace of battle after the dragon attacks the village. Alizi continues to tell her story as she explains how she had set a trap for the dragon, and when the dragon came back, she fought with the dragon as suddenly could not see the dragon again, but when she got back to the village, all of the villagers had gone missing except Amel. Alizi asks Setsu if he had heard of any case like that of a kidnapping dragon, but he tells her that he has not heard such, but he and Livia decide to help them figure out what had happened. Livia starts first as she suggests that the dragon might be a zombie, but Setsu hits her head and tells her to be serious. Livia also suggests that it might be a siren that is luring the people of the village into the ocean with their voices. Setsu tells Livia that the village is not close to the ocean, but Livia replies to him that there might be a siren living in the mountains because of the food, and Amel tells her that sea monsters have a distinct smell and they would have found out. She also quickly adds that Livia does not smell bad. Then, Setsu brings another option that the village might have been attacked by space aliens, but when Livia hits him as well, he begins to think of another thing that might have happened as he asks Livia if she can make villagers disappear. Alizi becomes surprised that Livia is the god of the sea as Setsu had mentioned it, but at the same time, the carriage owner tells them that they would not be able to cross a bridge because of the heavy rain. The passengers continues their conversation as Livia asks Alizi what she would do, and after explaining that she would go and find the evidence of the lost villagers, but Setsu thinks about the issue, and he begins to wonder why the dragon kept coming back to the village, and Livia tells him that monsters are attracted to magic powers, and the only magic power strong enough to attract a dragon is the transfer magic. Setsu wonders if the villagers had vanished before the dragon attacked them, and he tells the rest that the only explanation to the issue is that the villagers were taken somewhere by the magic. Alizi tells Setsu that all magic needs a user, and he replies that she should ask the user herself as transfer magic needs preparation, and it can only be done by someone who arrives in the village 2 years back. Amel becomes shocked as she asks them if they are suspecting her, because it sounds absurd, and Alizi also tells Setsu that Amel is the victim and not the culprit. Setsu tells them that Amel had talked about the smell sea monsters had, and Livia is extraordinary as her magical powers does not leak when she is in her human form, but Amel was able to tell that she is the god of the seas. Amel replies Setsu and says it is because she knows few things about monsters. Then she uses a kind of dark magic to blow up the carriage. A Mel floats in the air and turns into a huge dragon. Then Setsu saves Livia and Alizé. Then they begin to fight the dragon, who begins to shoot out fire at them. Alizé goes to a corner and she becomes sad as she is not able to know, despite calling herself Setsu's student. Then Setsu calls her and tells her to also try to fight the huge dragon monster. After a tough fight against the dragon, the three are able to defeat the dragon, and after they hit it for the last time, the dragon disappears, and later Setsu and Livia crosses the ocean, and Setsu tells Livia that Alizé would be okay as she should be able to finish some jobs she is taking if she wants to call herself his student. Meanwhile, Alizé becomes sad, and she goes back to the village in the house she had shared with Amel. Then Amel suddenly comes in, and she explains to Alizé that the villagers have turned to dolls as her masters needed them for the war. Alizé asks her what she is trying to do, but Amel replies that her real name is Meluor the Monster Master, which was given to her by Toma. Days later, Shironeko goes to the marketplace, and immediately people begin to give her so many food items, and she becomes so surprised seeing that they are too much for her to carry. She thanks them and promises to repay them back and immediately takes her leave. She is suddenly met by a group of children who immediately begin to disturb her to teach them how to beat up monsters as they wish to be strong like her, but she tells them that fighting is her job, and as kids, their job is to play. She immediately sees that more and more people continue to give her food items, and she sees that she cannot carry any more food items, and they immediately begin to laugh at her. Later that evening, she gets home and immediately notifies her sister that she has gotten home, and Mineko sees that she has returned home with a lot of food items as usual, and she immediately realizes that it must have come from the people in the village. She immediately begins to cough, and Shironeko goes to get her, while beautiful medicine, and hands it to her to drink. Mineko begins to cry and apologizes to her sister, but Shironeko promises to make her well and hugs her to comfort her. Meanwhile, Setsu begins to look for a boat urgently, and he sees that there are no available boats, and he decides to ride at the back of Livia. She immediately gets angry hearing his intentions, but calms down after hearing him ask her nicely. The worker then tells him that there will be a boat the next day, so that they can head back to where they want to go, and Livia will not have to carry him on her back. She immediately gets provoked and tells them that if they can both read the room and see that she is happy about him riding her, but Setsu tells her to follow him so that they can have a good place to rest. Shironeko then goes to get another medicine for her sister, and she is given another task to kill somebody, and the girl tells her that if she completes the task, she will be able to afford medicine for her sister. She begins to think about it, and Setsu immediately walks in, and Shironeko sees that he is matching the image given to her, and she takes her medicine and leaves the inn. Setsu and Livia go ahead to book the room in the inn so as to get some sleep. Later that night, Shironeko shows up at the inn and tells the caretaker that she had made up her mind to carry out the task, and she asks Kuroinu if she can call her sister, seeing that she has been a help to her and Mineko. Kuroinu goes ahead to manipulate her and tells her to get the job done so that she will not get her sister very angry. Shironeko then goes to their room and sees that Setsu and Livia are both fast asleep, and she tries to use her long sharp nails to cut him, but she sees that he is using illusion magic, and he kicks her out of the window of the room and begins to wonder who she is. Setsu begins to fight with her, but all her attacks on Setsu are blocked, and he sees that she is trying to blast something in the middle of town, and he immediately stops her and gives her a very strong slap on her face, causing her to pass out. Setsu then notices that she has dark magic on her, and he immediately sees that she is coming from somewhere, or someone has placed the magic on her. Setsu then sees that she is unconscious and brings her back to her sister. She then wakes up and sees that Setsu is beside her, and immediately tries to attack him, but Setsu signals her so that she will not allow her sister Mineko know what is going on. Shironeko immediately begins to thank him for bringing her back home, and Setsu sees that she does dangerous jobs to save her sister, and realizes that her sister isn't suffering from any illness, but instead she is cursed and they need to figure out a way to save her. Shironeko begins to beg him to save her sister, as she will do anything that he wants.
Wait a minute!
Setsu then assures her that he will surely save her, and she has nothing to worry about. Setsu then asks Mineko if she can bear the healing process, as it is going to be very unpleasant, and she tells him to go ahead with it, seeing that she wants to feel better. Setsu immediately begins to summon a sword to devour the curse, and while it begins to destroy the curse from her body, Setsu is immediately attacked, but Shironeko blocks the attack from getting to him, and they all see that it is the innkeeper. Livia then uses her ability to push her away from them so that Setsu can continue with the removal of the curse. The innkeeper begins to wonder why the god of the sea is working with a human and asks her if her powers can work on land, and she begins to divide herself surrounding Livia. Livia then uses her water ability to destroy all of them, leaving the original innkeeper, and takes her out. Livia then asks her what Toma wants, and she tells them that he wants to become a god and wipe out every living creature on earth. She tells them that it is something Toma can do, and she is his faithful servant. She immediately brings up a crystal ball that shines very bright, and she uses that medium to escape from them, and they immediately become surprised and wonder where she has gone to. Setsu then comes back to them, seeing that she got away, and sees that Toma is trying to become a god, and also tells Livia that Mineko was wearing the same necklace they had seen before, and they have to stop Toma. Mineko then runs to her sister, seeing that she is now feeling better, and they immediately feel happy that the curse has been taken away from her. Meanwhile, Shironeko was disappointed, seeing that it was the innkeeper that she trusted has been the one causing harm to her and her sister all along. The following day, Livia wakes up and realizes that they are already on a boat back to meet the Beast King, and she tells Setsu that she thought that they would have a good night's sleep, but she could not see that it ended very bad. Setsu then sees Mineko and Shironeko, and the two sisters begin to beg them that they would like to fight with them, seeing that he helped Mineko, and they would want to repay him. Setsu thinks about it, and seeing that they really sound serious, he decides to allow them, seeing that Livia is in support, and he helps them onto the boat and they sail off. At the Regdom royal capital, the advisors to the king are busy arguing about whether to attack first or not the people that are planning on attacking them, but the king remains silent and notices that his daughter too is not saying anything. Ro then notices something and begins to run out of the court, telling her father that she will be right back. Meanwhile, Setsu and the girls arrive at the capital, and he is denied entry, seeing that he is a human and he calls their king by his name during a time of war. Shironeko then informs them that he is with them, seeing that they are also beasts like them, and begs them to let them through, but the guards refuse. Setsu then thinks that he should leap in like he did the last time, but he suddenly notices that Ro is falling from above, and she lands on top of them. She immediately goes to meet Setsu and tells him that she got his scent. Setsu also sees that she has not changed a bit, and she begins to laugh. Mineko and Shironeko immediately notices that she is the Beast King's daughter, and they see how close she is to him and how Setsu begins to play with her. They all begin to wonder if she is truly the Beast King's daughter, seeing how playful she is. They proceed into the capital, and Regulus, the king, sees him and also jumps on him, stating that he missed him while he was away. Setsu immediately grabs the king and slams him on the floor, and the king sees that he has become stronger than ever. The king then decides to hold a party and a feast, but Setsu tells him that it is all fun, but he has come for a very important and urgent issue, which is the war between the humans and the monsters, and he also tells the king that Toma is alive, and he is behind the plotting to kill everyone. The king then tells him that he will go and defend his nation, but Setsu refuses, as he will want him to stay back since he is the king. Regulus then suggests that his daughter goes instead of him, seeing that she is equal in both rank and ability to him. While they keep contemplating, the commander of the Zu Dorado army comes in and tells the king that they cannot risk any manpower, seeing that they are also under attack. Setsu begins to wonder who he is, and he introduces himself to them. He also tells them that is the fiance to Ro, making Setsu surprised. The king sees that he has a point, but tells him that Setsu is the hero he told him about. Ruga then reminds the king that he has been missing for 5 years, and how they can be certain that he is still on their side. The king begins to think about it all, and he tells them that both sides have a point, and he tells them that there is only one way beastmen use to decide who is right. Ruga then challenges Setsu to a duel, and the king tells them that he will be the one to officiate the duel, and whoever wins will be betrothed to Ro, making everyone surprised. Ruga then tells him that he will be waiting for him at the arena at noon, and he should prepare for his demise, and he begins to walk out. Later that day, Setsu tells the king that he has made things even more annoying, and the king tells him that beastmen are not easy to convince, and fighting Ruga is the only way. The other girls also see that they also have a reservation to make Setsu their master, and Livia tells them not to make things more complicated than they already are. Later that night, Ro goes to meet Ruga and tells him that she will be straight with him, and tells him that Setsu is stronger than him and he does not stand a chance of winning. Ruka tells her that he is a beast man and will do anything to protect her. He also tells her that an Easter mage gave him something to amplify his abilities so that he will be able to defeat Setsu. Ro immediately becomes worried but becomes speechless. She then goes out and sees that Ruga has never looked at her, and that is the reason that she has never fallen for him.
Women.
The next day at the capital, the crowd begins to cheer on and Mineko and her sister begins to hope that Ruga does not defeat Setsu. The king then declares the battle open, and they both begin to fight and Setsu sees that he did not expect him to be that fast. Ruka then tries to use his flying claw attack on him, but becomes surprised seeing that Setsu immediately uses his hands to push them back towards him, cutting his face. Setsu then tells him that he wants to see his full power and begins to wonder why he is wasting time. Ruka becomes angry and transforms into a beast. Setsu immediately picks him up and slams him on the floor and tells him that he just wants to borrow Ro for now and he is not planning on marrying her, and he tells him that he does not want to hurt his beastman pride any longer. Ruga gets angry and he immediately uses the power given to him by the maiden and becomes very powerful. Setsu sees that he has become very powerful and tries to cut off his hand but also notices that he can also regenerate. He then begins to find a way to devour the curse, and he begins to call his sword Glutton, but he sees Toma, who appears at the head of Ruga. Toma begins to talk to him and tells Ro not to interfere in the conversation between the both of them. Toma then sees that Setsu is trying to protect him and notices that he is always trying to protect someone else except from him, and he becomes angry. He tells him that he will finally win him over and he disappears. Later on, the king apologizes for approving the duel and Setsu tells him to forget that as they have more important things to do. He goes to get Ro and leaves. Setsu begins to train and remain calm after he has been summoned to another world without his permission, and he tells them not to dump their problems on him, but he continues in his training amidst all that is happening. Toma begins to wonder how he can be so calm and decides to risk his life fighting a war that they are not even aware of who their enemies are. He becomes more worried and Setsu tells him that they have no choice but to help them fight. He tells him that since they are in the same situation, let them do their best to survive and work together. Toma looks at him and smiles, and they begin to head back to the castle. On their way, Setsu calls Toma and tells him to end the war happening in the land, as getting killed by strangers is totally wrong. Toma becomes afraid and tells him that he is scared as he is not strong like him, but Setsu promises to protect him and not let anything happen to him. Setsu then tells him to call him by Setsu, and they both agree to work together. They get to the room and Setsu tells Toma that he is leaving, and if he wants to help the world he is in, he will have to know more about the world. He then plans to leave and Toma calls him back and tells him that they should meet back once they become heroes for real, and she promises to get stronger. He watches Setsu as he leaves, and years later, he was given the title of a knight due to his extreme strength and how he has saved the nation. Toma immediately looks up and says that he has gotten one step closer to his promise to become a strong hero and end the war. They then go to attack a temple, and due to his strength, he is able to take out the entire army in the temple, and he instructs the remaining soldiers to clear out. Toma begins to leave and immediately hears a voice calling him, and he gives into the voice and goes to the necklace. Toma continues to fight the remaining enemies, and he sees a soldier from the capital who tells him that the king has ordered for peace, and those to sign the treaty will be passing where he is any moment, and he immediately calms down and sees a cart carrying passengers. He looks and sees Setsu, and immediately becomes surprised as he is with the Beast King heading towards the capital, and Toma begins to wonder why he is there. Toma heads to the capital to watch them sign the treaty and sees how they chant his name for ending the war. He immediately goes to meet Setsu to congratulate him and remind him about their promise to each other, and he informs Setsu that he has gotten a way to go back to their world, and he would want him to come with him. Setsu refuses and tells him that there is a lot to do in the new world that Toma can go without him, and on hearing this, Toma becomes very sad and watches him as he leaves him. He then tells Setsu not to leave him again, but Setsu refuses and neglects the promise he made to Toma, and Toma begins to cry. Suddenly, Toma becomes possessed by the spirit in the sword, and he promises to destroy everything so that he can go back to the way he was. He begins to fight Setsu, and Setsu begins to beg him to snap out of it, but he refuses, and Setsu begins to wonder if it is the people in that world that deceived him. They continue to fight, and they immediately disappear. Toma immediately appears back in the temple, and he sees that he is all injured and battered. Then he sees that none of his dreams actually came true. He also sees a flash of people suffering, and immediately releases them and tells them to join him by telling them that they would become gods together. The human ship immediately see land, and they begin to prepare for battle. Their commander immediately gives them a little speech to motivate and prepare them for battle, and they begin to cheer on. They then begin to wonder where Setsu has, and Yuvi reminds them that he has come to the world for the second time, and they all vow to restore the peace that they once had. The soldiers set their foot on land and begin to charge towards the monsters. The monsters begin to fire their magical blasts at them, and the humans begin to retaliate the same attacks and use them to destroy their blockades. The general of the beasts immediately insists that they must not set foot on their camp, and the humans break more of their blockades and begin to enter their camp. Meanwhile, the other friends of Setsu immediately set off on their own mission and begin to advise the other fighters with them not to run after fleeing or wounded soldiers, but instead they should focus in the front. They begin to attack and successfully make their enemies begin to retreat. One of the young fighters then decides to kill one of the soldiers, but he is immediately stopped by a girl, and she tells him not to kill him as he is hurt and cannot fight any longer. Suddenly they hear a voice and see that a portal is open, bringing down huge warriors from the sky, and they begin to attack them, but the humans manage to stop them, and they begin to wonder who the swordswoman is that has been attacking them. They then realize that it is their friend Elizzy, and they begin to wonder what happened to her. They realize that she is being controlled, and they ask that she is released back to them, but instead the monster tells them to become her puppets instead so that they can all stay together. Elka then goes to attack her, but Elizzy comes in to block her, and she tries to remind her to come back to herself, but it's of no use. She immediately shifts back from her, and they see that the monster controlling her immediately cuts herself and spills the blood on the floor. They begin to wonder what she is, but one of them tells them that it is not regular blood, but concentrated magic power. They begin to watch as the blood forms together, and Melior tells them that she is the monster master, and the blood that she spilled on the floor immediately turns to different creatures, and they all stand surprised.
Oh my god! Wow!
They begin to fight them one after the other, and they successfully take out 3 of the monsters, and Elka plans to take out Melior, and she tells her other teammates to take out the other monsters. They then see that the little girl had taken care of the last monster, and they ask her if she has any more toys that needed to be killed. Melior becomes angry seeing that they have successfully killed all the monsters, and she orders Elizzy kill them, but they manage to easily stop Elizzy, and Elka goes for Melior and hits her knife out of her hands. Melior becomes surprised, and Elka immediately drives her blade through her, and Melior becomes surprised seeing that Elka pierced her magic organ. Melior falls to the ground and begins to bleed into the river, and Elka tells her that it is the price she has to pay for toying with people's lives. Melior immediately stands up and tells them that she cannot die as she has extra organs and an extra magic organ. They all become surprised and see that she is walking towards them. She tells them that she was created as a weapon. She then uses her abilities to summon a chimera, which is a monster with 3 heads, and she hops on it and tells them that it is showtime. They all become surprised seeing that she had to use the limit break spell, meaning she can go beyond her limited abilities, and they become worried. They begin to dodge the attacks coming from the monster, and they all become tired and run out of options. Suddenly they see a butterfly and begin to wonder where it is going, but suddenly they see Elizzy, and she uses a sword to kill Melior, and they all begin to watch. She immediately hugs her, and she begins to cry and remember all that they have been through together, and Melior immediately turns to stone.
Emotional damage!
Later on, they begin to attend to Elizzy when another attack springs up from the river. They see Shadow, and they realize that he is very strong, but Yui decides that she will be the one to fight with him. She begins to tell them that she is one of them, and her training is paid off. She then advances to fight Shadow, but they all suddenly see a light from the sky, and they see someone falling from the sky in lads, creating a cloud of dust. They begin to wonder who it is, and they suddenly see that it is Setsu, and he tells her that she is safe now. In the Beastman continent, a soldier comes to tell the king that they are ready to send forces to the Demon continent, and the king gives them the order to send aid as well. One of the chiefs asks the king what would happen to Ro, but the king tells him that Setsu is already on his way, and he would take care of it. Yuvi and the rest of the team face Shadow, then Setsu jumps into their midst and Yuvi is unable to control herself as she immediately jumps on him to tell him how much she has missed him. Setsu tells her to stop and he tells them that they are all safe as he is there in time to rescue them. Yui immediately tells him how she had been training with Elka being her master, then she immediately goes on all fours to tell Setsu to sit on her back as she is not able to do it as well as Elka would. Setsu hits her head and tells her that he does not need another crazy character.
Me personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
And they would talk about it later. Setsu tells Yui to stay back with the rest of the team while he fights with the soldier. Shadow tells Setsu that he is glad to fight with him again, and Setsu also tells him that he knows she is the same man who he had fought with while at the Disaster's castle. Shadow tells Setsu how flattered he is for him to remember him, then Setsu looks at his team and sees that they are all protected by Yuvi's magic. Then Shadow asks him why he is protecting the weak because of how strong he is. Setsu tells him that he loves them, and that is why he would protect them, as he does not care about the pleasure of being strong. Setsu attacks the man as he jumps to launch his attack on Shadow, who had told him that he is well prepared to defest Setsu. On the other hand, Mineko and Shironeko goes to meet Kuroinu, who has been fighting some soldiers, and when they get there, they tell her that they are not willing to fight with her, because she is their elder sister, but Kuroinu tells them that their sisterhood makes her sick, and she would make sure she kills the both of them. Kuroinu attacks the sisters, and after a lot of skills and techniques, the two sisters weaken her as they both use their powers together. Kuroinu falls and the sisters think they have defeated her, but she tells them that she would not allow them to go scot-free. She reveals her huge monster arms and the sisters become shocked as she captures Mineko with one of her huge arms. Then she uses the other arms to pursue Shironeko, who tries to dodge her attacks but fails because Kuroinu is fast. After wounding Shironeko, Kuroinu begins to laugh at the two sisters as she tells them that they should thank her as she would kill them together. Shironeko manages to stand up, and when she does, she immediately calls out to Mineko, and they do a special ability known for beastmen called the Beast Merge, which makes the two sisters emerge into one person. They both merge, and they both become 2 times stronger than they ever were. After fighting and defeating their elder sister, the two sisters go back to their different bodies, and Kuroinu reveals that she had little sisters of her own as well, but it is too late to save her as she immediately dies. Meanwhile, the soldiers from the Beastmen continent try to defeat another enemy who is also Toma's servant. The soldiers all try their best to defeat the man named Verdos, but he laughs at them as his body is made of iron, then he urges them to attack him more while he defeats them in a heartbeat. Suddenly, Ro comes and she tells the soldiers to leave as she would defeat Verdos, but Verdos begins to laugh at her as he tells her that he admires her courage. She asks why he is so hard, and he explains to her that he was created by humans who made experiments on him, and the results of the experiments gave him an iron body which no one can defeat. Ro feels sorry for Verdos, but she tells him that Toma is trying to destroy the world based on his delusions, but Verdos tells her that there is nothing wrong with it, as the strong always gets what they want. Verdos suddenly mentions Ruga's name as one of the people they have destroyed, but this angers Ro, and she immediately dashes at him to punch him, but he tells her that she is rude for attacking him while they were having a discussion. Ro also tells Verdos that he does not know anything about Ruga, but she also vows as the daughter of the Beast King, she would make sure she hits him until he breaks. Ro vids Vidos, but Verdos suddenly changes shape into some iron balls, and he tells her that his magical power is not his strong body alone, but the ability to morph his body into any shape or size. He begins to use his iron balls to hit Ro, and when she becomes weak, he tells her that her pride means nothing, then he turns to go. Ro tries to stand up, but as weak as she is, she tells him not to mess with the pride of a beast man, but Verdos becomes surprised as he tells her that she is supposed to be dead. Ro suddenly activated her full power, and as she dashes towards Verdos, he tries to stop her with his magical balls, but she becomes unstoppable, then she hits him hard, and this makes him remember that he had heard that when beastmen goes into their full furry mode, they begin to burn themselves and plan to take their enemy along with them. Verdos falls and Ro continues to punch him, then he uses a kind of shadow magic as his shield, but Ro punches him so hard that his shield breaks. Verdos thinks about what he can do to protect himself from the angry beast princess. Then he releases some huge spikes from his body, and these spikes pierces through Ro's body. Thinking she is dead, Verdos begins to laugh, but Ro uses her last strength to break the spikes, and she continues to hit him. Ro becomes very weak, and she tells Verdos that a beastman's pride is greater than anything. Then she falls down, and he immediately walks up to her and tells her that she is a fool, but he suddenly heals her. Ro stands up, and when she asks him why he healed her, he falls down and tells her that she is straightforward, and everything she had told him made him soft. She also asks why he is working for Toma, and he tells her that no one had accepted him for who he is, but aside from that, he liked hanging out with hot boys. Now I'm really mad! Ro decides that she would carry on his pride with her, but Verdos dies, and she begins to feel sorry for him. On the other hand, Setsu continues his fight with Shadow, and after trying all of his powers, he realizes that he is unable to defeat Setsu. Then he decides to use his strongest skill of all. After activating his skill, Setsu schools him and defeats him with his powers, but he tells Setsu that if he loses, he does not have any purpose in life. Setsu tries to spare him, but when he sees that Shadow is still trying to attack him, even with how weak he has become, Setsu decides to use his magical power to hold him down, but Shadow falls down. But before he dies, he thanks Setsu for allowing him to fight his last battle without holding back. Toma suddenly feels that all of his men have been defeated, but he tells himself that he would meet Setsu for the final round of their battle. Livia runs to meet Dizastal, and Dizastal tells her that Evil is safe as Setsu had helped them to defeat all of Toma's minion, and she also adds that the battle is in their favor, but Toma walks in and tells them that the battle is not over yet, and he draws his sword and tells the ladies that he would show them what despair is. Setsu runs into the castle, and when he gets to where Toma is holding the ladies hostage, Toma tells him that he is feeling jealous as he did not think Setsu would get there as fast as possible. Setsu immediately attacks Toma, as he tells him that he would not let him harm his friends. The two begin to fight, and Toma tells Setsu that once he puts an end to the world altogether, he would make sure it remains only himself and Setsu, so that they would have plenty of time to talk. After destroying half of the castle's roof, Toma uses his shadow magic, and he tells Setsu that they would start the real fight soon. They both use their skills against each other, and after a while, Toma mocks Setsu for losing his touch, but Setsu attacks him. Toma uses his shadow magic to change his sacred sword into a blaster, and when he blasts it at Setsu, Setsu dodges it and its impact hits a mountain far away from the castle. Setsu begins to think about what to do, and he immediately tells himself that he would not want Toma to shoot his blaster in the city, as it would destroy half of the city. Setsu takes him up in the sky, and they begin to fight there. But when Toma sees that he is unable to blast Setsu, he changes his sacred sword into a machine gun. Then Setsu falls, but he quickly gets protected by the magical powers of his friends. Setsu immediately uses his sacred sword, called the Glutton, to take the hits from Toma's machine gun. Then he uses his full powers to hit Toma. Setsu also tells Toma that he should give up as his minions and friends has being defeated, but after remembering how smooth Setsu's life is, Toma begins to cry.
Wait a minute!
And he goes on a rage of power as he yells at Setsu for always leaving him alone. Toma builds a huge blasting machine, and he begins to aim it at Setsu. But as Setsu tries to dodge the attacks, he realizes that he cannot get closer to Toma, with the way the machine continues to launch attacks at him. Toma tries to give Setsu a final attack, but Setsu uses his sword Glutton to avoid the attack. But with the impact of the attack, a huge part of the castle tries to fall on Setsu's friends, and when he checks them, he realized that they had all used their magical powers to form a shield above themselves. Setsu decides to rush his attacks on Toma, and after a huge attack, Toma's blasting machine breaks into pieces and Setsu is able to launch attacks on him. Toma also tries to use his powers, and he eventually succeeds in hitting Setsu, and Setsu falls down hard. Then Toma becomes excited as he begins to tell that he has defeated Setsu, whom he thought was a step ahead of him every time. Toma enjoys his short-lived victory, and Setsu immediately stands up, and he uses a dimensional magic on him. Then he uses his sword to make the earth devour Toma. Toma begins to yell in pain. Then he tells Setsu that he did all of those things because he wanted to be by his side, but he realizes that it is too late for him as he is going to die. Toma surprisingly wakes up, and he sees that he is not dead. Then Setsu tells him that he never wanted to kill him, and all he did for him was to remove the cursed spirit that had possessed him. Then Toma begins to cry on hearing this, as he is unable to believe the fact that Setsu is giving him a second chance after all he had done. Toma is then taken into the prison as Setsu helps him to get a better punishment from the leaders of the demonic and beastmen continent, as they all agree that he would use his transfer magic to return his classmates back to their original world. Toma becomes emotional as he sees that Setsu is able to keep the promise he had made to him. The following day, Toma uses his magic to send the students back. As promised them, he tells Setsu that he wants to go on trips, so that he would be able to see what he can do to help in the world. Then Setsu also sets out on an aimless trip with Yui, who had decided to stay with him. Elka and the team say their goodbyes, and when Setsu and Yui set out, they see Livia, who gives them an assurance on how peaceful the seas would be on her watch. They watch Livia fight a kraken before they go to the demonic continent to see that Disaster is repairing her city, and she also found a store for Ruri, who begins to sell squid rings. After that, they set out to the Beastman continent where Ro, Shironeko, and Mineko are made heads of the army. Then they promise Setsu to train hard so that they can defeat him someday. After checking upon the nations to see if they are okay, Setsu and Yui decide to explore the world in order to see the cool things it has for them.